When was the last time, and I should know the answer, but I don't. Do you know the answer? When was the last time that there was a clear conservative majority on the Supreme Court?
I don't know that we've ever had a conservative majority on the Supreme Court, at least in modern times. We have had a Republican majority for decades. But one of the things the book goes through is that Republicans are terrible at nominating Supreme Court justices. Democrats, they get almost 100% of their picks right. Republicans, we don't even bat 500. Many of the worst judicial activists in history were nominated by Republican presidents. And the last chapter of the book, I traced the history of Supreme Court nominations going back to Dwight D. Eisenhower. And if you look at Earl Warren, William Brennan, John Paul Stevens, David Souter, Harry Blackmun, the author of Roe versus Wade, all of them were Republican appointees. And what I try to lay out is a path to how to get it right going forward. That if you look at those justices who remained faithful to the Constitution, who honored their oaths, justices like Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito and my former boss on the court, Chief Justice William Rehnquist, they all had similar patterns. They had served in the executive branch. They had defended conservative principles. They defended constitutional principles. And here's the most critical part. They had been excoriated. They had been pounded in the press, and they hadn't given in. And that is a proven record under heat and under fire, I think, is the most important criterion. On the other hand, when Republican presidents nominate stealth candidates who've never said or done anything, but someone says, trust me, they'll be great, over and over again, they turn into train wrecks.
God, you put it perfectly. I have said to my listeners for decades, the moment a person cares what the New York Times says about them, it is over. So you have put it in your way. If they have proven, if a judge has proven that he or she does not care what the media say about them, they will be a secure constitutionalist on the bench. Otherwise, probably not.
You know, there's actually a syndrome that has been named after that, which is for a long time, the Supreme Court reporter at the New York Times was Linda Greenhouse.
Right.
And there was something they called the Greenhouse effect, which is justices like Anthony Kennedy and Sandra Day O'Connor learned if they go left, if they vote with the left, they got praised in the New York Times. And the Greenhouse effect consistently moved the court and the country left. And, I mean, one of the things I write in the book is we need Supreme Court justices that don't want to go to D.C. cocktail parties, that despise cocktail parties, because the pressure to move to the left is enormous.
I can't stop laughing and smiling because, you know, it's like a joy to hear truths. The book, folks, is so important. One vote away, How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History. Ted Cruz's book. It is up at DennisPrager.com. It is not long. It is extremely interestingly written. And as I said, as you hear, really important. I have a lot to talk to Senator Cruz about, and we will be back in a moment. This book is a great guide, by the way, to some of the great cases before the Supreme Court that have changed American life. It's really terrific. One Vote Away by Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz. By the way, do you know if there's an audible version of your book?
So there is an audible version of the book. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble or anywhere you get books. And I'll tell you, actually, just today, the book is the #1 bestseller in the country on Amazon. We're #2 on Barnes & Noble. So it's been really a lot of people have been going and getting it. And part of it is because what I try to do in the book, Dennis, is take people really behind the scenes and behind the curtain of what happens at the Supreme Court. So every chapter of the book is on a different Supreme Court liberty. And I tell the inside story. Before I was in the Senate, my career was as a Supreme Court litigator, so I argued cases before the court. And so I tell war stories, and so we talk about free speech and religious liberty and the Second Amendment and U.S. sovereignty and democracy and elections, and I try to help people. For a lot of folks, the court is hard to understand. It's confusing. It's important, but you don't necessarily understand the players and what's going on. And I try to make this very readable and interesting. You don't have to be a lawyer to enjoy it, but if you want to know what's going on at the court, if you want to know really the stakes of this 2020 election, and I think the single most important issue in this election is who the Supreme Court justices will be going forward, and why on issue after issue for our fundamental rights that they're just one vote away from being taken away. And if you want to also understand the enormous stakes of this epic gladiatorial battle over Judge Amy Coney Barrett that we're in the middle of right now, I think this book helps give you the information to be able to talk with your friends and families and around the water cooler and really understand what's going on.
Somebody called me last week, Senator, and said, "Dennis, are you aware that if she is confirmed, there will be 6 Catholics on the Supreme Court?" To which I said, "So what? I'm a Jew. I couldn't care less. I'll take 9 anybody who's conservative." Well, it's so funny that these are things that bother people. You're not Catholic. Yep. You don't care.
No. Look, what I care is that we have judges that follow the Constitution.
Exactly.
And there's a big difference. The left views these as partisan warriors. They view the Supreme Court just as another legislature. And this stems from the 1960s, where they decided to take over the courts. And the reason they did it is because their ideas were not popular. They couldn't get them through actual elections and convince elected legislators. That's right. So they said, well, let's just get 5 lawyers in robes to decree this outcome for the whole country. And on the right, which one of the things that in the political debate there's a disconnect, which is the media doesn't understand that conservatives don't want justices who dictate conservative outcomes. For example, one of the chapters in the book is on school choice. I am passionate about school choice. I think it is the most important civil rights issue of this century. I don't want a Supreme Court that mandates school choice. I think it's absolutely the right policy. I fight for it in the Senate, and legislatures should adopt it. But do you know that we're one vote away from the Supreme Court striking down every single school choice program in America? That the left wants to use the court to ban it, to say you can't choose to give kids in struggling schools a scholarship and a way out. And it's a real difference between following the Constitution versus trying to abuse the court and turn it into a partisan legislature.
If onto another issue for a moment while I have you. If the Democrats win a Senate majority, even by 1 vote, can they then simply install 2 new states?
So they can. Adding a state does not take a constitutional amendment. It takes simple legislation.
Of a bare majority, of a majority of 1.
Yeah. Well, to do it, they would have to end the Senate filibuster, which I believe they would. So if the Democrats win in November, if we wake up and we've got Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi running everything, I think Schumer almost immediately will end the filibuster in the Senate, which means the minority then in the Senate is no longer able to stop their radical agenda. Once they do that, I think adding 2 states, adding the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico will be one of the first things on their agenda. And their reason is nakedly and crassly political. They believe that will give them 4 new Democratic senators.
Yes, which is all they need. That's like a permanent majority in our lifetime.
That is their plan, and also packing the Supreme Court. They've been very open about that they want to increase the number of justices on the court, and we saw in the first debate, Joe Biden refused to answer the question.
That's right.
Because his base is demanding the answer be yes, and that would destroy the court. And yet that's where the left is.
I must admit, though, I found it shocking when I learned that all it takes to admit a state is a 51-49 vote.
So on D.C., there is a constitutional argument because the Constitution specifies that there has to be a district for the federal government. So it depends how they draft it. There would almost surely be litigation over D.C. The way they've done it is very clever, which is they've still created a D.C. that's basically the Capitol building and a couple of other buildings, and they've made all the rest of D.C. a brand new state around it. That's how they're trying to get around constitutional prohibition. But that being said, as a general matter, admitting a new state, Puerto Rico, for example, it's clear it can be done by legislation.
What did Harry Reid end, if not the filibuster?
So Harry Reid ended the filibuster for judges and executive nominees. So on the nomination side, but not on the legislation side. So we still have the filibuster. If you want to pass a piece of legislation, it takes 60 votes. And right now, the Democrats use the filibuster all the time to stop good legislation. But what it has prevented is, in times of Democratic majorities, it has prevented...
Okay, all right. I'm going to continue with Senator Cruz. His number one best-selling book is up at DennisPrager.com. One vote away, up at DennisPrager.com. And I want to just touch on, in the couple of minutes remaining, Senator, you are a fighter against the tech company censorship that's increasing. I used an example earlier in the show about did the president take or not take hydroxychloroquine, which, by the way, I've openly stated many times I take every week, along with zinc every day. And Dr. Zelenko is one of the best-known doctors in the country to have used it on thousands of people. And now Twitter has shut down his account. This is a doctor on the front lines in New York. And they took down his Twitter account because he promotes hydroxychloroquine. This is how bad it is.
Well, big tech is shameless, and they're getting more and more egregious with their abuse of power. When it comes to medical science, listen, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to report to try to diagnose or treat anybody. But on any question of science, what you want is a full and fair discussion. You want to hear all sides. And history has not been kind to those who've tried to silence dissenting views when it comes to science. If that were the case, we would still believe the earth was flat. If that was the case, we would still believe the sun revolves around the earth. I mean, the history of science has been a history of heretics challenging whatever the conventional wisdom is. And when it comes with dealing with a pandemic that just has struck the United States and the world from Wuhan, China, we need to have a vigorous discussion and an analysis of what's working and what isn't. And big tech doesn't care. They are monopolies. They are violating the law. And they're utterly brazen. You've got a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires who have declared themselves the rulers of what is allowed to be said, the arbiters of truth. And if you disagree with their politics, God help you, they will silence you.
Well, I hope other senators feel as you do, because you've been, along with one or two others, the only voices on this matter, which is the fundamental freedom of our country, speech. Congratulations on your book, Senator. One vote away. Let's stay in touch, and God bless you.
Thank you, Dennis, for all you do, and thank you for the great work PragerU does as well. It makes a difference with millions of people across the country and across the world, and your voice is very, very important.
Bless you. Thank you. It means a lot. We shall return. The book is up again at DennisPrager.com.
The Dennis Prager Show.